What are some interesting creepy topics to look into? The amount of people that go missing in Alaska. Fucking wild. It's really big and really cold. The end. I wonder how many disappear on purpose and live as hermits in the mountains somewhere. There's a theory that suggests Alaska has the largest population of runaway felons. Black holes. The idea of a horrifying pure black orb that completely traps even light and is so dense it is practically impossible to know what is actually inside is pretty much the definition of terror. The weirdest thing for me is that the moment you pass the event horizon, all world lines point toward the singularity. Nothing in existence we know of can change that. Your future only contains one possibility, and that is the singularity. Black holes can be so massive that your entire planet could pass into its event horizon and you wouldn't even know it. But in that instant, you're trapped in every sense of the word. You could get in a spaceship, blast off from your planet at the speed of light, and it doesn't matter. You're still heading toward the singularity. No matter what direction, or how much speed, or how many likes and subscribes you have makes any difference. You're sitting there on your rocket blasting away from your planet that's falling toward the singularity, and yet you're still heading toward the singularity. In any direction. The universe is gone to you. You are beyond it. Beyond time. As close to unknowable horror as possible. An object so unreal that even the fabric of space-time can't contain it. As an addendum, if the universe goes the path of heat death, there is an extremely long period of time, basically 99% of the lifetime of the universe itself, where the only thing in the universe is just roaming black holes. No matter, no light, just a totally black universe with invisible black holes whipping around. Imagine being on a spaceship sitting there in pure darkness as these terrifying objects are everywhere around you. Not a great place to be. The fate of the universe really bums me out. There's a video called Time Lapse of the Future which goes into it, and eventually because of entropy everything just stops. Unless there's a big crunch or something, the universe is doomed to become empty space-time. How did we discover black holes and how did we figure out what they do? The universe is honestly the most creepy topic there is. We have no idea why it exists, what lies beyond it, what will happen to it in the future, and so on. It is filled with mysteries beyond our comprehension. We live on a time machine of sorts, viewing the stars and galaxies as they looked hundreds, thousands, and billions of years ago. An example is the red giant star Betelgeuse in the upper right of the Orion constellation. It has an orangish hue. As a red giant, it is nearing its end of life. Astronomers have noted that it periodically dims over the past decade and could go supernova at any time. In the astronomic time scale, any time means it could be tomorrow or STLL thousands of years. Betelgeuse is 642 light-years from Earth. If we were to witness its supernova tonight, it means that it actually exploded in the year 1381. This has always baffled me. The fact that things happened long ago but we experience that event in the present time. The fact that we can view an object in real time but understand that that is not actually the current state of the object messes with the brain. It's like staring at a glass full of ice, and being told that the ice already melted and is water. But my eyes tell me that's its ice. Hell, just the size of our universe is incomprehensible, which makes it creepy as fuck once you start getting in there and learning about it. I'll use a recent discovery as an example. So we all know how big our sun is, right? It would take 1.3 million Earths to make up the volume of our sun. That's pretty big, but our sun is tiny compared to other large stars out there. Anyways, back to the recent event. JWST recently discovered millions of stars that are all 10,000 bigger than our own sun. You'd think that we would have seen these stars. I mean 10,000 bigger is pretty fucking massive. And there are potentially millions of these stars that were discovered. But the universe is so insanely fucking gigantic that these millions of supermassive stars are barely even a blip on the radar. The number of active serial killers at any given time, including right now. I often wonder how many times I've been in the vicinity of / had some type of interaction with an active serial killer. Honestly, this is crazy timing. My brother used to have some skate buddies when we lived in North Fort Myers, Florida when we were younger. This was like, in the early to mid 2000s. I was around 10 or so. Sometimes I would go over to his friend's house, and though I don't remember their dad or stepdad or whatever the hell he was to them, my brother said something seemed off with the guy. And my brother remembers more about it than I, as he is 7 years older than me. Sure as shit, here recently my brother told me he found a story on the guy and apparently he had murdered a 11-year-old girl, Robin Cornell, and her 32-year-old babysitter, Lisa Story, in 1990. Wild shit. My brother was in contact with this dude. I asked him if the dude was an asshole to him, and he said not to him per se, but he witnessed him being an absolute pos to his friends. I've read that it seems like the heyday of serial killers has been over for a while, in terms of there being prolific and high-profile ones. But we can't be sure if that's because modern policing methods have enabled law enforcement to catch killers before they become serial, or if the killers have become smart enough to evade detection. Lost cultures and ancient civilizations. It's crazy how much human history is really lost to time and how many different experiences and forms human life must have taken on. It hasn't been very long that our ancestors were trying to eke out a living by hunting and gathering while trying not to be eaten by other animals or dying from diseases or infections. This current life of going to school and having a job is really just a recent format for life. We have the luxury of knowing what exists up above and down below, where just 500 years ago it was anyone's guess. Sure, a few people had a rough idea in some more populated areas, but knowledge didn't spread very fast and could quickly be changed or hidden. Yup. I've learned so far that Atlantis could have been in West Africa, and due to that place becoming the Sahara, the Atlanteans went to Palmyra and Egypt, forming the ancient civilizations there and building the great structures in those cultures. And the big-ass circle thingy in West Africa was the Atlantean capital. Have you checked out the Fall of Civilizations podcast? I would definitely recommend it. Each episode covers a long-gone civilization and what everyday life might have been like for their citizens. They recently did a great one about the Nabateans. Oh man, this sounds super interesting. I need to check them out. History of torture techniques and devices. History of medicine. History in general has some pretty creepy shit. This guy was a fucking monster in a white coat. Did lobotomies with an ice pick in the name of medicine. Schizophrenic? Lobotomy. Epileptic? Lobotomy. Depressed? Lobotomy. PTSD? Lobotomy. Female and unhappy with your place in society? Lobotomy. Black/Hispanic/First Nation people? Lobotomy. The classic one-size-fits-all medical solution to all society's ills. And best of all, if the patient didn't want a lobotomy, he could overrule them because he was a doctor. I personally find that stuff really interesting, and the crazy techniques they used for medicine too. If you like to read, then The Ice Pick Surgeon is a really good book about scientists who have done crazy experiments and stuff. Scuba diving accidents. The one I'm thinking of right now, there was more blood and organs outside the victims than in. Man, go watch Last Breath on Netflix. It's about a sat diver and a tragedy that happened while they were on a dive. That's all I can say about it, but my mind was blown. It's a documentary with real footage of it. I think this is my all-time favorite documentary. The story of the guy who purposely tampered with his fiancée's equipment and took her on a dive she wasn't experienced enough for and then let her die down there is probably the worst one. Pretty sure they were married and on their honeymoon. Another diver took a photo of this guy and his dead wife was in the background. Bastard didn't get anywhere near the prison time he should have. Cornflakes. The inventor of cornflakes made it bland and boring so people won't get excited and have sex or masturbate. He also ran a sanitarium, put carbolic acid on little girls' privates so they would never derive pleasure from sex, and put wires on boys' penises so that when they had an erection it would cause them pain. Among other things, he believed in some crazy crap. He is the entire reason that circumcision is widespread in the US, to make the penis less sensitive and prevent masturbation. I'm not kidding, that was his reasoning. No other developed country endorses this practice, but it's pretty much standard in the US. It's a completely pointless cosmetic procedure and it should be banned besides the rare occurrences where it is medically necessary. It's barbaric. Call the monster out for who he was. J.H. Kellogg. Kellogg? Wow, and they kept the name? Sightings of strange creatures. I also like reading about places to do urban exploration. Might have to do with the fact that as a kid I was very curious and just loved the idea of sneaking into places I wasn't supposed to get into. Greater than strange creatures. Cryptids are fascinating because when you actually study the history of these things, they fall very quickly into one of two categories, particularly large terrestrial mammals, animals that were found and documented by scientists pretty much as soon as someone dedicated reasonable resources towards doing so, and cryptids for which there is no solid evidence whatsoever despite significant amounts of time and money spent attempting to document them. In other words, if Bigfoot really is out there, at this point it pretty much has to have either has supernatural powers or otherworldly technology to have avoided detection. Or, dun dun dun, the Goberman is hiding them squatches. About 12 years ago, I was on the road late at night. It was very dark, so my brights were on. I was coming down a steep hill and saw something just beyond the base of it. At first I noticed an animal carcass in the middle of my lane. As my car leveled out, my lights shone brightly and directly on the most horrific thing I have ever seen. Crouched over the carcass was a huge shape which stood up extremely quickly, 8 or 10 feet tall, and lanky, a creature of darkest black. It had red eyes so evil and so intelligent that I will never forget them. It saw me, and looked right at me. All this I saw in seconds, before the monster bolted into the forest at unexplainable speed. As bizarre as it sounds, all of it happened. To add to the craziness of this, I ran my car into the ditch at the same point in the road some years later, and once a bird hit my grill at the base of that same hill, causing me to swipe a mailbox with my side mirror, which snapped clean off. I've seen about a dozen wrecks or disabled vehicles at the same spot for years. If I were to describe the thing I saw in one word, werewolf. Parasites, very disturbing rabbit hole. Zombie parasites are one of the most fascinating and creepy things at the same time. Crazy to think of what they are capable of. Totally. They're all fascinating. The weird reproduction strategies they have blow me away, like the ones that go through more than one's host, or ones that cause their offspring to be cared for by the host. There's one in crabs that still gives me the heebie-jeebies. https://n.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/saculina_carcini. This is a really interesting one. It makes the host ant live long and stay healthy at the expense of the colony. I think of it as the billionaire parasite. The many real cults that exist today, both in the USA and abroad. I was raised in a cult, extremely isolated and abused. You'd think that it'd be obvious, especially since we were isolated with relatives that had normal lives. They just loved the rural life, so they lived way far away from the city, but they were not involved at all. The craziest, most heinous shit can happen right under a loving family's noses and they wouldn't know. My relatives never found out until I escaped my room one day and told what was going on, especially if the main victims are little kids who don't know any life other than the one the cult leaders raised them in. One simply gets used to it and accepts the violent trauma, thinking this is all there is to life. It's very scary for me to think about how many other people might have grown up in a similar situation as mine and never escape. I'm so sorry these things happen to you. I hope you are healing. And just how susceptible we are. We think we're not, but under the right circumstances we can all be brainwashed. Those experiments by the Japanese in World War II, Unit 731. The fact that the US allowed them to go free in exchange for their research, which proved to be useless, is one of the greatest mistakes of the post-war era. They should have all been hanged. What about the ones by Hitler? Heard about Mengele? I'd count to spell his name, in a podcast. It's truly horrifying. Dude, Joseph Mengele literally made two twins have intercourse to see if the offspring would be twins, and when it wasn't he threw the fetus into an incinerator and walked away. How many indigenous women go missing from reservations? In Canada, the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls concluded in 2019 that Indigenous women and girls are 12 times more likely to be murdered or go missing than any other demographic group. That's so insanely high. This is as creepy as it is sad. MKUltra and the US government's willingness to test LSD on unsuspecting citizens. Tuskegee syphilis experiment 2. Allegedly Charles Manson's cult murders might have been connected to MKUltra as well. There's a great book about it called Chaos by Tom O'Neill. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was a subject of MKUltra when he was a teenager at Harvard. Weird shit that lives in the deep dark depths of the ocean. Good chance the Kraken stories are about giant squid. Giant squid are cool, but I meant shit like this. https://u2.bkt1spar1u. After the Boxing Day tsunami in Indoman, there was some crazy stuff on the beaches. Nightmare. The Wikipedia done on the Rwandan genocide. Randomly decided to learn about it cause I'd never heard about it, and the amount of information on it is astounding. Around 500,000 people were killed in 100 days in 1994. Was like reading a horror novel with everything building up to the actual event, genuinely sickening. And apparently there is a new genocide happening in Congo against the Tutsi by the Rwanda-backed rebel group M23. There is a movie about this called Hotel Rwanda. Hear the trailer. Yeah, that scene when Hess driving and the road seems bumpy and rougher than usual. Deep sea life is a consistent source of creepiness. There are football-sized pill bugs, freakish squid, demonic fish, swimming masses of Lovecraftian tentacles, chunky jellyfish, prehistoric leftovers, and obscure whales that are almost never found alive. Never want to see the phrase beefy oral arms ever again. I thank thee truly for linking to all these amazing videos. If you're into declassified, formerly, top secret documents and such, check out the CIA's Project Stargate. There's a guy on YouTube called Mr. Mythos who has 2 excellent videos about it, and he cites all of his sources, most of which are directly from the program itself. Essentially, The CIA used psychic spies throughout the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. These spies were able to perform a process called remote viewing, in which they were able to see locations that they had zero prior knowledge of. Secret Soviet laboratories, Chinese chemical weapons manufacturing plants, a bunch of crazy shit like that. While remote viewing, they were able to discern a lot of information about these places with relative accuracy, such as personnel, furniture, missile launch codes, things of that nature. The program was officially deactivated in 2005, although it is highly speculated that the program is still in use today, just under a different alias. Edit, TLDR, the CIA had, possibly still has, spies that used an advanced form of astral projection to spy on other countries. Look up Project Looking Glass. Freaky shit. Possibly a form of time travel if I remember correctly. So, 11 from Stranger Things. Doppelgangers. They say if you see someone who looks like you walking toward you, it means you're going to die. Or it's an identical twin nobody told you about. Or both. Robin Hitchcock. I mean, if I see someone exactly like me walking towards me, chances are I'm going to kill him. So he's not wrong. I'd team up with my doppelganger. We'd make the coolest tag team ever. The amount of people who seem disappear in the forest even when around others. Or the examination of maps of missing persons versus cave systems in North America. The silence that is experienced by so many is scary. But it's scary because we know what causes it, a predator that no animal feels like they can outrun or outfight, so their only defense is hiding and staying quiet. Birds still chirp with bears and wolves nearby. Your body still feels the wind with those creatures around. So what is so dangerous, so all-consumingly terrifying that you and every animal in the vicinity go literally dead quiet and alert and all know to fear it? Same thing with the whole uncanny valley phenomenon. What the hell is in our collective past that makes us so incredibly uneasy around things that seem human-like, but which we know are not human? I've heard one explanation that it is a reaction to dead bodies/corpses, but death and ritualistic handling and honor of the bodies has been part of the human experience since at least the dawn of civilization, so I find it hard to believe that this is the reason for the unease. I got hooked on the show Deadly Women. Dunno why I found it so interesting, but it definitely was. Candice DeLong. My wife used to watch that show all the time. I always got a laugh out of the commercial "Want More Deadly Women" because it came across as a creepy sex site or something. Did she ever ask you about life insurance policies? How banks are fucking every average American in the asshole. Real spooky stuff. Had no idea Wells Fargo was into anal. As someone hoping to purchase a home soon, nothing is scarier to me. Liminal spaces. Not necessarily scary but really uncanny. Thank you. I'd never heard of this, so I googled. Very interesting. r/liminal space. Edit. Subname. Medical history. It's creepy, utterly bizarre, disgusting but most certainly fascinating, and there's many subcategories. Do you listen to the podcast Sawbones? It is more modern medicine now but used to be more medical history. Look at humanity's willingness to weaponize animals. Nuclear chicken bombs, exploding rats, cats, bats and pigeon incendiary/guided bombs and tank killer dogs. Honestly, St. Ogula is the most metal and fucked up of them all. Another one would be the Blood Queen Elizabeth Bartany. Bottery. There's a large school of thought that the charges against Bottery were BS put forth to steal away all of the political power she had gained when her husband died. The incendiary bats and pigeon-guided bombs might have just been cover-up projects for the ASMN-2 bat. The ASMN-2 bat was an autonomous, radar-guided bomb that was highly classified, so you could imagine that the US would fund the Pigeon Project and Bat Bomb, so if anyone ended up finding papers on the ASMN-2 bat they would assume it was just one of these projects. History is full of creepy and spooky tales. Also, there are a lot of eerily similar instances or situations between different cultures and times. I find most of it more fascinating but creepy, but going off my friends, they should be creepy. A few fun topics to look into. 1. Secret clubs/societies, especially those closely associated with the elite and Ivy League colleges. Way stranger than Greek life. 2. More disturbing than creepy but the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. It spurred modern ideas of unions and workplace safety. Some of the eyewitness accounts also have callings to other tragedies like 9/11 or the French Charity Bazaar fire of 1885. Things like victims choosing to jump to their deaths or first responders not being at all prepared for the utter destruction. 3. I have a personal love for royal tragedy, but I think most know at least the basics of Tsar Nicholas II and Anastasia and the whole assassination. But my gosh, There is a reason why Rasputin is still a ghost story. Manipulative, used religion to his own ends, survived so many things that should have killed a normal person, etc. For a few perhaps less well-known serial killers. Amelia Dyer, Delphine LaLaurie, she is particularly awful. You know you're a monster when pre-Civil War South thought you were the devil. Dean Corll, Nicholas Dumont, John Lynch, Diogo Alves, Maria Swanenberg, Belle Gunness. 5 SIDS. 6 Aqua Tofana. 7 The absolute insane amount of reported serial killers who committed cannibalism and were accused of being werewolves before the 1900s. Seriously.